Welcome to ALTA's Virtual Advocacy Summit. Our program will begin shortly. Just a friendly reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be available later this week on ALTA's website.
During these uncertain times, it helps to know that some things never change, like knowing who you can count on to see you through good times and bad. Old Republic Title has been doing business the right way for over a century, and that commitment continues today. We're doing what it takes to support the health and well-being of our employees, customers, and the communities we call home. By providing our agents the digital tools and resources they need to serve their customers now and well into the future. There is also the peace of mind that comes from having financial strength and stability, so we can be here for you and your customers when it matters most. Guided by timeless values and a vision that is focused forward, Old Republic Title is here for the long run, and we're ready to support you every step of the way.
Welcome, everyone. This is Diane Tom. I am the CEO of ALTA, and I'm really excited to be with you all today for our virtual advocacy summit. As many of you know, this is our second of a series. And today we're going to be talking about conducting closing in a COVID-19 world. And if you missed our first series, it was how the GSEs impact the title industry. Please go to our website, meeting.alta.org/advocacy. And you will see the recording there, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to take a look at that. Well, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors today, and particularly our feature sponsor, Old Republic, who've been a great partner with ALTA. This particular webinar that we're going to be hosting here today will be recorded and will also be available on the ALTA Advocacy Summit website later this week. And one of the things I'd like to ask is that to make sure everybody knows, is that all the attendees are in listen mode only. So please feel free to submit your questions through the question box on the top of the screen. And at the end, we've set aside time for the Q&A. Well, as we all know, as we sit in our homes and continue to do our work, but in the new normal, our industry has done this for a long time, protecting the property rights for more than a century. And protecting our industry has taken on a whole new meaning these days. I think we all have stories that we can tell. But like this crisis and any other crisis, and I've learned this in my short time within this industry, ALTA and the title industry has stepped up. And so one of the things that we're really excited about, as you know, one of our top priorities, even prior to COVID-19, was to be able to tell the story of our industry. And we've been working on a video that should come out early next week, hopefully, and very soon, that talks about the work that we've been doing and sort of highlights our industry during this time. So stay tuned for that and keep an eye out for that. I'd also like to highlight, before we get started today, our good #GoodDeeds effort. Our really awesome social media team put this together. We've got some amazing input from folks, everything from virtual dog therapy sessions to folks who are helping the homeless, to purchasing reading and books for children, donating money to local communities. And I know that you guys do this anyway, but folks have really stepped up. We'd like to highlight that for many reasons. One, it's important, but also I think we all need a little good news these days with everything that's going on around us. So please be sure to send any additional ideas or good deeds that you want to be sure that we share to our communications team at communications@alta.org, and we'll be sure to share those. Now, before we get started, our friends at RamQuest have a special message that they would like to share with you.
Are you ready? Ready for a whole new way to connect with customers? Ready for a modern, seamless experience for everyone involved in the closing process? Then you're ready for Ready to Close. Ready to Close is a secure, centralized place where customers see at-a-glance order progress and can receive email or text updates as important closing milestones are reached, where wire fraud can't touch your wiring instruction communication, where documents are easily shared by parties on the file, and where non-notarized documents that don't require wet ink can be e-signed. All of this ready-to-close functionality can also be conveniently accessed using a tablet or any mobile device for a consistent user experience on the go. So if you're ready to experience fewer phone calls and email inquiries, if you're ready to increase customer satisfaction, referrals, and repeat business, then you're ready for Ready to Close by RamQuest.
Thank you, RamQuest. We're so excited to have you guys here as a sponsor as well today. And now we're getting to the good stuff. This is, it's been really awesome to watch our industry step up, the creativity, the ingenuity, the efficiency. It's just really amazing. And it's my great honor to introduce your moderator today, someone I can't say enough about. I think from the day I stepped into this role, she's been an inspiration, someone to look up to, someone who amazingly gets the job done and always looks like she's having a ton of fun doing it, which is amazing, and helps all of us as guiding us through this particular issue we're going to talk about today, but also spends a lot of her time on a lot of our other committees and to the overall leadership of our organization. So with that, I'd like to introduce our moderator today, Cynthia Durham Blair. Cynthia, as many of you know, is our immediate past president, and she also continues to serve on ALTA's board. She's a founding member of the law firm Blair, Cato, Pickering, Casterling, which opened its doors in December 2014. She's been practicing law in South Carolina for more than 20 years. Her practice is concentrated in the area of residential, commercial, real estate, REOs, and relocation. But she's the most multi-talented person I've met. Really just such a great leader, and we're so lucky to have her with us today. So it's my pleasure to welcome Cynthia. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Diane. What a very nice introduction. I'm not sure I can live up to that, but I really appreciate it. Good afternoon and good morning to you who are on the West Coast. I have with me here today my fellow ALTA board member, Maureen Pfaff, WTP NTP from Washington State, the president and CEO of Olympic Peninsula Title. I also have Randy Gilbert from Florida's Title Insurance Company. Randy serves in what a role, I wish I had this role. His role is Chief Happiness Officer. I love that. And then I've got Tyler Newland, Digital Closing Implementation Specialist at Pioneer Title Agency in Arizona. Finally, we have Steve Gottheim, Senior Counsel at ALTA. Steve will be joining us later in the webinar for Q&A. So be sure that if you want to submit questions, submit them through the question box at the top of your screen or email meetings@alta.org for your questions. We'll be happy to address those in the Q&A session. But we're going to do this today. We're going to talk about how we're all kind of functioning in this new world of coronavirus and the various ways we can still conduct business. And because we've got a great variety of people from all over the country, we should be able to get some good information. But please do submit your questions to us. So without further ado, I wanted to start off and get the speakers talking about it, because I know that's why you're here. You're here to hear what other folks are doing, get suggestions or information to help you in your business. So I want to start off with Randy and see how things are going down in the Sunshine State. What percentage of your closings, Randy, are RON or REN? REN being the remote ink signed notarization, I think is what the acronym stands for, REN, or drive up. Kind of talk to us about how you're doing closings down in Florida, Randy.
All right, so Florida only enacted RON in January 1st of 2020. So now we joined a bunch of states that already had it. But for us, the latest in prop tech, in other words, technology and property for title insurance companies, is this remote online notarization. And with prop tech, it used to be about ease and convenience, but ever since COVID-19, it's been more about the safety, health, welfare, and social distancing. So RON has brought on a whole new purpose. So that's really what we're trying to push is the safety, the health, the convenience, and the social distancing. We don't do any RIN, which is the remote ink notarization, because that's not allowed. In other words, where somebody will ask somebody on Zoom or Skype to show a document remotely and do a closing that way, and then they'll notarize it when the documents are mailed back. That's not allowed in Florida, so we don't do that.
Yeah, is it allowed? So, Maureen, how about you? Is REN permissible in Washington? I know RON is.
Well, we are kind of in the same arena. Our RON rules, our RON law was voted in late last year, but the rules weren't going to be put into place until October of this year. So we are currently working under an emergency order that allows for RON. But I have to say, our company has done a grand total of one RON transaction, although we were very excited to finally do our first fully digital closing. We just aren't seeing a lot of requests from lenders for this, and our local lenders are not yet ready for fully digital closings. So we're really focused more on using DocuSign to get as much of the signing out of the way and really limit how much time we're spending with our clients. So we're doing a fair number of curbside signings in our parking lot. And then we also have installed plexiglass screens on our signing tables in our 2 offices. So for those that have to do a full loan package, we're not doing those in the parking lot. We're bringing people in. But again, it's sanitize your hands as soon as you come in the door. We walk you straight to the signing room. We give you your brand new pen and you take it with you, of course. And we're really trying to keep people down to the minimum amount of time we have to spend face to face for their safety and the safety of our staff. I would love to be doing a lot more, Ron, and we really haven't even dealt with RIN. That's so new. I haven't honestly even looked into it, whether it's permissible in my state or not. And it seems, Randy made a comment the other day about, if you get past all your Ron laws, RIN seems like a huge step backwards. And
right.
So I'm just focused more on Ron and DocuSign.
Tyler, what about you in Arizona? I know you've got Ron there. Anybody doing RIN closings? How's that working? Or what are you doing? How are you doing most of your closings?
Sure. I don't know anybody that's doing RIN in Arizona. Our executive order gave an early implementation for our RON statutes. So the folks that are moving forward on digital are going with RON. We've got offices all over the state. And so in each of the different communities and each of the different office makeups, there's a very wide variety of the different comfort levels from our customers and our folks on the ground there. So we've really just tried to empower the folks in the office to decide what the best approach is kind of per transaction. So we're doing the health screening questionnaires. We're doing drive-up closings in quite a few of our branches. Quite a few of our branches are still taking on in-office signings with, a twist, designated signing rooms. There's one of our plexiglass screens there on the left. And then we have been closing RON transactions as well. We're probably doing 4 to 8 RON signings a day right now, and that's ticking up pretty quickly over the last couple of weeks. Several months ago, we went ahead and started signing up with the RON vendors, knowing that August was coming and we were going to get to RON at some point. And so we wanted the experience on the technology and start figuring it out. A lot of the thought that goes into whether or not we can do RON on any transaction is what's being signed. An affidavit of disclosure is different from an acceptance, is different from a warranty deed and a deed of trust, and they each have their own little unique quirks. So we're very careful about what it is that's getting notarized electronically and how we're going about doing it. If it's something clearing up a piece earlier in the chain, underwriters were willing to make special exceptions to allow those through using out-of-state notaries. So all kinds of different things have come up. Owner's affidavits, marital certs, all kinds of stuff that aren't necessarily a warranty deed and a deed of trust and an e-note. We weren't necessarily going for the holy grail of full digital closings. We were just trying to get practice with RON earlier, which seems to have really helped us out in the last few weeks.
I was going to say that was really probably your staff was probably a lot more prepared than other folks because you've been practicing it and then have to put it in place sooner than you expected. You were probably in a better to do that, which is great. So we don't have RON or RIN allowable in South Carolina. And we're doing strictly drive-up closing. We're not letting people in. We're doing, send the packages out to the buyers and sellers ahead of time, call them to review all the documents over the telephone. And then when they come in, they essentially, they stay in their car and one of our lawyers goes out to the parking lot and signs, has them sign just the signature pages. So logistically, it's a lot more. We only have a few people in office. We have about 7 people in our main office and everybody else is remote. And so logistics are tough because everybody else is remote. You're trying to get packages in, organized, emailed out, and then signature pages pulled out, put back in. So the logistics of doing that are pretty intense, particularly on a heavy closing day. Anybody else kind of experiencing that kind of thing?
I ended up mostly making my title staff remote, and the majority of my escrow staff is coming into the office. So our process has stayed pretty steady and normal to what we're used to. I will say, I had been advocating for the use of DocuSign with my staff for quite a while, and was having the challenge of, what we do isn't broken, why should we change? So this has kind of been there's a silver lining in this current scenario for me, in that they finally see the value of not having to clean everything the old-fashioned way. And it was very funny to me, once we launched the DocuSign, to a person, every one of my staff members who's used it has come back to me and said, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Why haven't we been doing this for years?" So I try not to say I told you so, but some days I do. But yeah, for us, because the majority of our staff is still in the office, the other thing that we're noticing in our operation is, because we have locked the doors and we're only bringing people inside who have an appointment and have to come inside to sign something, we're sort of retraining our client base that a lot of things can be dealt with over the phone or through email. And I think our staff is really liking having fewer walk-ins with random questions that they don't, that's not interrupting their day.
So we were, even if we wanted to have closing staff in, we haven't been able to have much in, just because they've all got kids at home. And I would think you're all probably struggling with that too. If you've got, if you're in the states where there's stay-at-home orders, and I think pretty much most everybody is, you've got your staff that's got younger children trying to work from home, and then also homeschool. Tyler, are you seeing much of that in Arizona with your folks?
Yeah, and multi-generational families too. Some folks have their parents living with them who are high risk, and so trying to figure out, one individual in the family might come in with a fever, and then they were in the office, and then now they're not, because there's somebody in their household who's showing some COVID symptoms, and they can be gone for 7 to 14 days, depending on how that situation evolves, sometimes even longer. And we've got a ton of family, where one spouse is at home with the kids and another's in the office, or they do half days each way. It's very complicated to try and juggle those schedules. And it's fun to look at some of the parenting advice articles that come out, how to work from home with your kids and stuff. And I've got 3-year-old twins and a 5-year-old, so I worked from home for about 7-10 days or something. Earlier on when we had some fevers around our house, and it's difficult.
Randy, how about you? What about your staff, and how are you handling that there?
Oh, one of the answers is you can either stagger the staff, and it's not necessarily, we have really big offices, so frankly, they're so far away from each other. I'm not as concerned about that. But to Tyler's point is they still have family of their own that they need to help out with their schooling. They need to be on the computers at their house and help out their children. So they also have multi responsibilities as well. We recognize that. And I think that's the best way that we're handling it, is by staggering.
So, Maureen, you mentioned that you'd only done one closing with Ron, and I kind of wanted to get a feel for, I think you said that you didn't think that the lenders weren't ready or the customers weren't really asking for it. What about Randy? What about you and Tyler? Tyler, I said you're doing a good many Ron closings. Is it that you find that the customer doesn't want to do the Ron? Is the lender not quite ready? What are the reasons you wouldn't do Ron in y'all states where you can do it?
So the main reason we get shut down on Ron is the lender. So part of escrow's job, as they're working through deciding whether or not Ron's going to work on a transaction, is they have to reach out to the lender with a very specific question. Seller would like to sign the warranty deed using remote online notarization. We need to tell the lender who is signing, what they're signing, and how they're signing it, and get the lender's approval every single time. It just doesn't matter what it is and how it's doing. We know that the lenders care about that for whether or not they're going to be able to sell the loan. So that's where we start. And there's maybe a handful, maybe a dozen lenders now that are even saying no to sales side documents. Some of that might have to do with the GSE's requirement to hold on to that video, even on sales side docs for, 7 years, life of loan, whatever it is. Because that started getting more difficult. And then loan packages, of course, whether or not they're going to allow a hybrid or whether or not they're set up for an e-note and an e-vault is complicated. And we have to guide those conversations very carefully to make sure that we've got a notary on the platform to work with the lender so that it all can mesh together. And we kind of knew that was coming a while back, which is why we didn't just pick our favorite vendor and jump with them. We knew the lenders were going to dictate a lot of these different platforms. And so that's why we're live on 3 now, with 2 more coming in, just a few days away, just so that we can meet the lender.
Have you got like a checklist or a questionnaire kind of thing that you gave to your staff so that they know that you first ask this and then you go here?
Yeah, and so the order of operations isn't always critical except for that lender question. You want to get that one out of the way first, because that's going to torpedo the RON signing, and it's really annoying to get through a RON signing just to find out that they're going to have to go into a traditional notary. But yeah, we've got a checklist that, you need the RON consent. Here's the counties that you can do it in. Initially, not all the counties were accepting these documents. Every county in Arizona e-records, but they didn't all come online at the same time. Now they all will accept them. And then same thing with the underwriters. The underwriters have their clear yeses, and then so that we can work through when we need to go to get special approval on something. So yeah, lots of checklists for escrow. And then the recording desks have started to put together some of their own, making sure that we're on an approved platform, using the right notary, making sure that we've got the proper consent from all parties that's specific to the document being signed. So yeah.
That's really helpful. I know that if you're willing to share that, ALTA would be very glad to disseminate that to anybody who might be interested in seeing the checklist that you've developed, because you really have gone further into this than probably a lot of folks have, just by virtue of being prepared for it earlier on. Randy, what about you? I know you said you're doing a little bit of RON. You're allowed to do RON. What are the obstacles to doing the RON closings that you see?
All right. So to Tyler's point, I totally agree. The very first question should be, is your lender going to allow it? Because if not, he's right. It kills the deal right there. The very close second, if not tied for first, is, do you have a social security number? Because although in the state of Florida, they allow 2 methods of what's called identity proofing, which is either by biometric reading of your face, like real matrix type stuff. Unfortunately, there isn't a platform around that actually can function and do that. So Florida's passed legislation that's allowed and thought about the future. However, the present doesn't allow it. So they need a social security number, because what they're really looking for when they're identity proofing the signers is they want to know, they want to be able to match the person with their address, the person with something in their background. And they're not going to be able to do that very well if the person is located in another internationally and they've never been to the United States. Well, how are they going to pull the background information? Because in the identity proofing process, the people are going to have to answer questions about themselves. And if they don't get it right, then they don't move on to the next stage, which is the RON proceeding. So there's that. The other thing is that we've come across, and this is kind of going back to the lender situation, is we did a closing for somebody who was moving to Florida. She was a doctor, an emergency room doctor in Illinois. She was wearing a medical jacket. She was wearing a mask. The mask was just below her chin. She was coughing like mad. And after we did the entire closing, she confessed to us that she did have symptoms of COVID-19. She was an emergency room doctor. And I'm not even done with the story yet. So then we send the package, which we already had approval from the lender, which I will share with you as Bank of America. This way because ultimately the conclusion of the story is that they said yours is the only one we've ever allowed as a remote online closing. We're just simply not set up for this. And we went back and forth, and we showed them the video, and we showed them. I said, look, there's no way on earth, because it would be tantamount to basically being homicidal for me to put somebody as a notary in the woman's presence because of the physical presence requirement of the notary. And so they agreed to let it go through. But after further discussion, I now understood why it is that some of these lenders are pulling back. And the answer is because of the promissory note. What they're concerned about is that if the promissory note is digitally signed, how does the bank, the lender, how do they transfer that promissory note? How do they know that it hasn't been assigned 50 more times right after the signer signs the promissory note? So then I understood what their concern is. So a possibility in the future to answer that is you can do your almost a hybrid closing where virtually everything is done. They sign the promissory note, they hold it up to the screen, everything is recorded, and then they mail it. And then you close once you get the promissory note DHL or FedEx over to you. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, there are definitely some issues with it. It's not, a lot of lenders aren't eVault ready, all the things that go into that. It's not as simple as, frankly, I think we thought mostly that it was more complicated because of the mortgage document, if it had to be notarized, like in my state. But really it is the sellability of the loan and the promissory note. So there's a lot of logistics that go into that. How are y'all finding that your customers are responding to the ways that you're doing different ways, the different methods of closing? What kind of customer responses are you getting? Maureen, what are you seeing with your clients?
I would say we're getting 98% of our clients are thrilled that we're giving them the option to sign most of their documents electronically. The ones that have to come in and just sign maybe, the note or the deed and a couple of extra documents that need to be notarized, when we tell them we'll do it in the parking lot, they think that's great. I think this is a terrific time to implement certain changes that maybe you've wanted to have in your practice and hadn't done prior, because people are very open to change right now. Everything is in flux. And so it's not such a shock when you say, I know you always used to come in and sign face-to-face at our desk, but we're going to do this over DocuSign. And even the people that, when they get the DocuSign, they need help, they're calling us, we're walking them through. I would say I can only think of 2 transactions in the last week where the DocuSign documents, we finally just voided them and said, no, just come on in. And I will say I live in a county that is, my secondary office is in Sequim, Washington, which is primarily a retirement community. So the bulk of our clientele are probably 60 plus. And while we never assume that they're not going to be as computer savvy as a millennial, we do definitely have a fair number that just kind of go, well, I don't use the computer. I don't know what you're talking about. And so we definitely have to up the customer service and hand holding to get them through the process. But people are generally just appreciative that we're taking care of their health. And, my staff is my family. This company's been in my family since 1982, and some of our staff has been here since 1982. So, I care deeply about their health and their families, as well as my client base. So it's been a learning experience, but it's been actually, overall, our customers have been fabulous in accepting of all the changes.
I'd say we really have experienced the same thing for the most part. Most people have given a lot of grace because things are taking longer. It may take us longer to get funding approval on something just because of the logistics of, getting the packages, like I was talking about earlier, getting the packages put back together and sent out for funding. And so funding approval may take us a little bit longer. With folks working remotely, they don't always have immediate access to, has the wire hit yet? Those kind of things that are a little bit slower now, not being in office. And I'd say, generally speaking, most people have given a good bit of grace and are glad, again, same like you said, Maureen, that we're watching out for and taking precautions to keep people safe and healthy. Have anybody else learned anything else over the last few weeks of having kind of done this and changed their process in a way that you think may be sort of a permanent process, a permanent change? Randy or Tyler, have you done any of that? Made some changes that you think you might stay in place, keep in place?
So one of the things that we ran into is an issue with time zones. we've got folks all over the world trying to sign their documents remotely online, and navigating multiple notary schedules with different time zones, really kind of a struggle. So we did go ahead and implement a scheduling tool so that we can send a link to the signer and they can pick a time that's available, and it references everybody's shared calendar to it. And then, they fill out some basic information so that we know they've got the right hardware, and they've got information to help us along through the signing. And it adds it back to the notary schedule. It adds it back to the shared schedule. And so it just takes a lot of that back and forth out of the equation, and it helps a lot with time zones, so that they're working in their time zone, we're working in our time zone, but it comes together at wherever we're at. So we're definitely keeping that around, and we might roll it out to the branches just so the larger branches could share that link and they can see the schedules available and get scheduled that way.
That's great. I think that's a great idea. Randy, how about you?
All right, so I kind of put together like a good, a bad, and the ugly on the remote online notarization. And some of the good is that when it works, it's a dream. The signers love it because they're in and out. We don't have expenses for DHL or FedEx because everything is signed virtually and then emailed over. So that's pretty awesome. So we save money. I see that there was a question, well, how do you deal with the cost? Well, you give up one and then you gain another. So it's almost a break. Also, there's a video that's taken. This is again part of the good. There's a video taken. It's recorded. It's kept for 10 years in under our platform. We use a third party. You're going to have to use a third party. You can't use one of these Zoom companies or Skype. You have to use an approved platform. And I'll share, like Tyler was saying, we also have a script as well. So we have an entire script where we ask, is this knowingly, voluntarily, consensually signed of your own volition, without duress, without free of any drugs, alcohols, or anything else impairing your ability to make decisions while you're signing today. So if we were ever going to be sued, like for instance, most notaries are not keeping logs. There's no requirements for logs. So if they get pulled into something, and somebody's contest, oh, that wasn't me, it's going to be pretty difficult to do when there's a video recording for the past 10 years of it. So that's a good thing as well. It's a lot less liability in my opinion. And frankly, the signers have a one-click option. I mean, if they want to click once and sign everywhere after they've reviewed their documents, it's done. Boom. So that's great. Now the bad is that if you're thinking that this is going to be a plug and play option to just, hey, I just purchased my Ron and now I'm ready to go. And this ain't a Sega Genesis, man. This ain't Sony. This isn't Nintendo. All right. It is not that easy. It takes a while. It is a pain. It is painful every bit of the way. We already spoke about, like Tyler raised, is the lender even going to accept it? So there is a learning curve. It's long to learn. You're going to have to upload the documents, and which is obviously that takes a lot longer than just sitting down with somebody pointing to where they should sign. You're going to have to do something called tagging the document. So, for instance, I had a document that was 104 pages long, so with 2 borrowers, which meant that I'm sitting there tagging the document every place the person has to sign and the other co-borrower has to sign, and then it glitched. It deleted, and I had to do it again. So that was a bit of a nightmare. So like I said, for the signer, it's a dream. For us, it's a major pain. And then you're going to have to decide. One of the questions was, what about the fee? You're going to have to decide, as a business model, fee versus free. Are you going to charge, or are you going to give it away in order to be competitive and put yourself out there as being somebody who offers some value-added service to, especially during this time. During this time, we actually made it onto the good deeds, which I was very proud of. And this was before they were even offering the good deeds. That doctor who had the COVID-19 symptoms, she got me thinking, really, this is something we should be offering right now for free. And frankly, you should be offering it for free because you should be beta testing it right now because you're going to glitch. So it makes it a lot more difficult for people to complain about something that's free. Not saying they won't do it. They'll do it, but it makes it a lot more difficult. You also are going to have to, at least in some states, at least with us, you have to be separately licensed to be a RON. You have to be separately insured to be a RON. And I'm talking about above and beyond what a notary is. You have to have separate E&O insurance for it as well. There are other platforms like NotaryTam Now, when we used them early on, before COVID-19, before the influx, they were amazing. We would send over the documents. They would provide the RON themselves. They would tag up the document. They charged more of a fee for it, but they took all the headache away. Now, because of the backlog, it's very difficult to get through. We almost missed the closing. We had to do it the old-fashioned way. Also, you're no longer in the title insurance business when you're doing RON. Welcome to tech support. You are now in the tech support business. You're going to have to explain to people that, yes, you do need a webcam in order to do an audio, video, remote online notarization. I swear that's happened. You're also going to have to explain to them, yes, you do need internet as well. I swear that has happened as well. So you're all of a sudden, you are going to have a newfound respect for your IT person because you are going to experience all of these questions yourself. And some of them you're just not going to be able to answer. And we've had to throw out another closing that we tagged up all the documents and said, all right, come on down. The other thing is that, we're so used to with technology, everything being so immediate and fast that people get frustrated really quickly. So if you explain to them early on that, look, this is new for me, it's new technology, if you're, be patient, then I think it's going to go a long way and it's going to be very helpful for you because it's probably just that mouse is only a little click away from a Facebook or Google review for you. But just remember that as well. So be kind, you're being recorded and go out and have a great closing, experience the pain, but eventually you'll get through it and you'll become good at it.
Well, so any of you, I know, Maureen, you wouldn't be because you said you've only done one, but are either you, Randy, or Tyler using RON for just cash deals, non-lender transactions?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And
makes sense,
one way that would come over
Much
some
easier.
of the struggles that Randy's mentioned is we've centralized all of the RON tech into a small group of folks that can specialize in it, that knows the platforms in great detail. So when the phone call comes in and says, this is the screen I'm seeing, what's going on, they're familiar with it and they can guide them along the way. Try to relieve that pressure from the escrow team who are experts at their side of the table and what they're doing. But it's going to take them a very long time, if ever, to become experts on 4 different signing platforms to accommodate all the different lenders.
That makes sense.
Yes, cash deals, absolutely. Those are pretty easy for us now. We generally only have a warranty deed for a seller that needs to be notarized. And we, as much as possible, we ask that the rest of the documents escrow takes care of, just because our notaries are pretty busy right now. So rather than the RON notaries tagging a whole bunch of different stuff, they're just left with a deed, and then escrow will take on the settlement statements and all the rest of the stuff that needs to be just signed.
So we've got a question about the role that the brokers, the realtors participate in the process, and I want to give each of you kind of a minute to address that. I want to, how we are doing it is obviously they're as involved as they ever were up to the point of the closing. But since we're doing them all drive up, occasionally we have a realtor who comes to the parking lot also and sits in their car and waves to their client. But for the most part, they just don't come. The money, if their companies didn't already get wires for their commissions, which we've always encouraged for quite some time, but there were quite a few that didn't. Most of them now have acquiesced and are now receiving commissions via wire transfer, which is a lot easier on us. And then ours are just set up to automatically email that wire confirmation and signed closing statement to them that they need. Anybody else? How are you handling the realtors any other way, Maureen? Anything different you're doing, or as far as the participation of the realtor?
The realtors in our area pretty much don't attend closings, and we have a few that are pretty religious about it, but the rest of them are saying, no, this is your area and we trust you, and our clients are in good hands with you. So that hasn't changed dramatically due to the COVID situation. We are now mostly depositing realtor commissions directly to their banks. We don't have to wire because we're in a tiny little town, and we just go out and take the deposits to the banks just like we do for our clients. We have a few real estate offices that still want us to drop the commission checks at their office, and they have, maybe a lockbox that we're putting them in, and then we just call them and tell them it's there and they go get it. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much been business as usual.
Tyler, what about you in Arizona?
We've asked folks that don't need to sign documents to come into our offices. And most people are very understanding about that. We've had a couple agents that, for whatever reason, aren't concerned about COVID and would like to attend closing and kind of make a stink about it. So it's just really important that we do our best to make sure that our escrow officers are empowered to turn people away when they don't need to be there. If it's not necessary for you to be in our office, you're not coming in. So
yeah, in the beginning, I think we had a few in the early stages.
Yeah, there's been some hard conversations, but by and large, the realtors don't want to come into our office anyways. They're as happy as not just to have an excuse not to attend.
Well, and one of the things that we always let them know is if you want to attend via phone, we'll happily put you on your phone and you can hear everything, you can interject, and I haven't had anyone take us up on that. But I always make sure
that pick us up on joining a RON signing. We offer it up to the escrow officers to join in, the loan officers, the realtors. And I think I've had 2 loan officers sit in on a signing, and they were mostly just interested in seeing how the platform worked rather than actually meeting the customer.
Wow. Randy, what about you?
So it's pretty much the same. We have the ability to allow anyone to join in to the remote online notarization that's being conducted via audio video. However, nobody's really requested it. Frankly, it would be pretty quick to begin with. And I would really propose to realtors that are looking to make the impression, because that's really what it's about. To them, it's about the customer service. We offer to wire their funds in always. Like you say, it's easier for us as well to just wire their money. But to me, the best bang for their buck would be to actually meet the people who they represented out at the house or whatever property it is, and do that face-to-face time within 6 feet, and make that appearance. Not necessarily at a table. There's no hand holding. There's nothing to really say. There's nothing for them to do. But show them that you care.
Yeah, I think so too. So the next question I see on our chat is, are Zoom or Google Hangouts appropriate places for watching remotely to notarize? With both, I know I can send a private link to parties involved. Is that enough? I'm assuming the question's talking about REN. And, we can't do that in our state. I think several of y'all said you can't do it in your states either. I would think that the question is back to the lender as to if you're in a state that permits REN, and you want to do that, I would think that the question would go back to the lender as to whether or not and your title insurance company as to whether or not the title company will insure and whether the lender will accept documents that are notarized using those kind of platforms. Anybody else have anything else to add to that?
I think it really depends upon the state, not necessarily the lender or the title company. Is it allowed, first of all? And for us, Sure. It's either, you have 2 options. It's either one, the person's physically present so that you can notarize the documents, or 2, you're doing it under the approved statutory method that's been employed and been, where great pains has been taken to draft those statutes to say how it has to be done, and you have to do it on the approved platforms, for which Zoom and Google are definitely not. I mean, it has to be recorded. Sure. They have to have the identity proofing. They have to have all these different additional safeguards that Zoom and Google just simply do not have.
Absolutely. But I do think the question was probably coming from somebody who may be in a state. I mean, there are quite a few states that have either mostly by executive order, I guess, are permitting REN. So, I think in the event you're in a state that permits REN, then the question is to the lender and to the title insurance company as to whether, they would permit, what platforms they would permit the use of REN, because I don't, it definitely, for those of us who've worked on RON for so long, the concept of REN is scary, frankly, to me, just because, you don't have you don't have the KBA, the credential analysis, all those things that we know about, the audio, video recording of it, and all of that we know is involved in the RON. So it's scary, a little bit scary to me, but it's I guess another means to an end to get business done. We're coming up on the time. What do y'all think is going to happen when the stay-at-home orders end? How do you envision kind of getting back to normal, or whatever normal is? Tyler.
What do I think when it's going to end? I think there's going to be a very slow return to normal. I think a lot of our folks that are working at home will continue to work from home. I think RON is going to continue to become more and more popular over time as lenders figure out a way to adopt. The lenders that have already found ways to adopt have started pushing it pretty heavily. And I just can't imagine that in the next 6 months, folks are going to be going back to where we were 3 months ago. I just don't think that's going to happen with most of any of it.
Yeah, I don't know either as far as how long it will take. Maureen, I think you mentioned that your title folks were working remotely and that you may kind of keep that in place for a while.
Oh, I actually don't foresee letting go of any of the changes we've made. I think that our client base appreciates options, and I think all of the options we've come up with, and maybe the parking lot signings that might disappear. My hope is that will disappear as we are more able to do RON. But I definitely like having some of my staff remote, and whether it becomes a permanent fixture for certain roles or whether it becomes a thing where people can, work from home part of the time and in the office part of the time. We've all kind of enjoyed having a little more space. And this is just proven. I mean, it's been bumpy because of the speed at which we had to implement the remote workers. But as we've figured out where the technology glitches were for us, it's starting to work really well. And I know several of my employees absolutely love working from home. And so I don't think that's going to change.
Randy, what about you?
So post COVID-19, when everything starts opening up, I anticipate that we are going to go back to doing what's easiest for us, which is just simply having somebody show up at our office and physically stamp and notarize documents. Plus, with doing things via RON, we lose one of our sales points. We have a beautiful $1 million penthouse that we have people come to, and we showcase this with art all over the place. This is how we like to make an impression. We can't make that impression just via a piece of glass on a laptop and a webcam. Now, what we will push, however, and I like what Tyler said the other day, which is we're just giving you options. You now have more options. You have the curbside, which why would you ever do that again? But but now you've got the RON, you've got the physical, and you've got now you have options. So, but who we will push it for are the foreign buyers. Now, I don't mean international. Like I said, you have to have a social security number in order to do the RON for us. So what do I mean? I mean, like the person who's in New York, the person who's in Illinois, wherever they are in the United States or out of the country, they can do this remote online notarization anywhere. So that's great for them, and so we will certainly push it for them. But it's important when you're in business, you have to put out everything.
And I love that. I've been a proponent in my state for us to implement RON, and we don't have it yet. But for that very reason, I think being able to give options is a good thing. And we certainly have a lot of buyers, out of state buyers, which would be much, and even out of the country, because we have a lot of military folks in our state. So it would be very nice to have options that were more convenient for the consumer than what we currently can offer. But I would say, similar to you, Randy, we do some interesting things at closing, particularly for first-time home buyers, to really sort of celebrate the consumer and their purchase, and it's exciting, and we try to make it exciting. And so closing I did this morning, of course, I was on the phone with the buyer. They're first-time home buyers, and it was a first and a second, and it was kind of a little bit messy. But we were laughing and joking, and I said, I hate that you can't come in, because we really try to have a fun with it and celebrate the fact that you're a first-time home buyer and it's exciting. And they said, oh yeah, that's cool. We really appreciate that. And they were like, well, next time we buy a house, that kind of thing. But that's been a little bit of a bummer not to be able to do those kinds of things. But I would like to have some different options for those who don't necessarily need to come in or can't come in, or for whatever it is. Okay, so we're into the Q&A session, and we've got a question here about POAs. So someone's asking if anyone's done closings with POAs. I mean, I think we do closings with POAs a good bit, but probably, so the question really is, are you doing POAs like with the real estate agent holding the seller's POA? Has anybody done anything like that? Tyler, with your Ron, you're probably not really having to do as much of that, but what about Randy, Maureen, are any of you doing those kind of things?
We have not had to do that at this point. We've been able to work with our clients. And yeah, we've had a couple clients get POAs for their parents who are maybe in assisted living in lockdown. I think that's the only time I've had to deal with that lately.
Randy, what about you?
Nothing out of the ordinary. They just
I'd say the same thing. Yeah, I'd say the same thing. We've done POAs. I'm doing one in just a few minutes, but it's a military husband giving POA to his wife. So we're still seeing that. I haven't seen, at least during COVID, I haven't seen a real estate agent POA. I've certainly seen it, and it happens from time to time, but I haven't seen it. I certainly haven't seen the instance of that increase.
I feel like that might be a California thing. I think that may have become more of an issue in California with the escrow people being asked to have POAs and just sign.
Well, we know that Freddie and Fannie have relaxed their guidance on that, but I know there's still a lot of agents that are concerned about the escrow officers or closing agents, or whatever you call them in your state, being the POA. We have not been asked to do that, and we in South Carolina as lawyers we don't love to do that for clients. In fact, I can't think of a time that we've done that, other than for like builder clients or clients like that we work with on a regular basis, and it's really not a POA. It's more of a corporate resolution authorizing signature. But for the most part, we don't do that for consumer clients, and feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. Okay, we've got another question here as we get close to wrapping up. What impact on the small agency do you foresee having to have multiple RON providers? Most agencies don't have tech departments, let alone a team dedicated to learning and implementing RON. So, Tyler, to your point about having dedicated staff to that, the question, of course, about small business owners, how do you think they'll handle that? And maybe both Randy, Maureen, let me ask you, because you're a small company, how many providers do you have now?
I am currently on with Pavaso, and then I actually used Notary Cam for the one RON that we've done so far. And, again, we're less than a month into even being able to do RON, and so I am still, getting my feet wet. I'm loving all the information from everyone in this panel today, because I've been taking notes while everyone else is talking about their experiences. But I think it's very similar in my mind to the fact that we have to deal with every lender's platform, for handling the loan documents. I kind of expect that we're going to have to learn, multiple RON platforms. My intention is to actually identify one person in each of my escrow teams that becomes the RON specialist. And out of the gate, my plan was mostly to use Notary Cam, because I think Tyler's point, and Randy, I think, mentioned it as well, we can actually have them do the RON signing and do the tagging. But I also know that right now they're very swamped, so I haven't been trying to get into that right now. But that's, I mean, I have 25 employees, I have 2 offices, I'm in one county. I understand that concern of, I have to learn all these different platforms. I do have a dedicated IT person on staff, but he's running all of the rest of our IT. So I know this is going to fall largely on my escrow department.
So we've got a couple of more questions, but before we do that, I'd like to show one final message from our sponsor, AmTrust.
In the world of real estate development, stakes are high. There's no room for error. Uh-oh, looks like something is missing, and the title insurance company isn't ready to close. You need a partner who covers every angle. You need AmTrust Title. $23 million surplus. And thanks to reinsurance from Big Brother AmTrust International Insurance, with over $2 billion in surplus capital. That's half of the 4 biggest industry players combined. AmTrust Title has a single policy limit of $525 million. It's all there on the Struck Special Bulletin. All types of real estate transactions. Problems are solved even before you discover them. Gotcha! Hit it! AmTrust Title.
Thanks very much to all of our sponsors for their sponsorship of today's webinar. Tyler, you had something you wanted to tack on to with regard to the question that the Marine was addressing right before the video.
Sure. So we have right now sort of taken a lead on this at Pioneer, but I don't think it's some kind of huge competitive advantage, and I don't think it's something that small agents necessarily need to be overwhelmed with. We are seeing a bunch of notaries here in Arizona signing up on different platforms, going in and getting their IPEN and RON certifications with the Secretary of State. And I've talked to quite a few of the different national notary providers, and they are working on being able to earmark the different notaries to the different platforms to help us and agents navigate those situations. So I don't think it's going to be very long, at least here in Arizona for the other agents, to be able to go to one of those providers and say, hey, I need a Pavaso notary to do a loan package at 4. And it will be very similar to scheduling and signing your other mobile notaries, just with a few tweaks added into it. You won't have some of the benefits that we're going to have with the on-staff notaries, but the cost to your bottom line probably won't be that different. It's not cheap having these people be trained on these different platforms, and it's not a very big cost savings having our people do it as compared to having somebody else do it. So I think give it time and maybe start looking now for those notaries, and I would imagine you'll find them pretty quickly in states that are live with it.
Great. We've got a couple more questions. The next one is, have any of us experienced a slowdown in productivity and communication concerns for those working from home? And I would say for me, yes, I have. Fair amount of my staff is dealing with trying to homeschool their children at the same time. And so there are times when even in the middle of the day or whatever, I know that they're having to stop and go handle something with their child. And so, yes, we have definitely experienced that. And we have automatic email responses that go out for everybody that say working from home. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can, just so that anybody who sends an email to them knows that that's what's going on. And we've, asked for some grace for people, just because everybody's dealing with this. And so we've certainly asked about that. But Tyler, how about you, or Randy? I'm sorry, I was meant to jump to Randy because we had talked about remote folks. Randy, have you experienced any issues with that?
Well, of course. I mean, if their attention isn't 100%, then anything that detracts from it is going to affect productivity. So I don't think anything more needs to be said on that. Question is how do you handle that? And You either accept it or you have a conversation with that employee and address it straight on. Don't let it curb it before it gets worse.
All right, next, the last question I think we've got, because we've just got a few more minutes left here. Are any of us seeing lenders, and I bet you, Tyler and Randy, you both can say this, but are any of you seeing lenders who are not yet approved to offer e-mortgages or e-notes more interested? Are there conversations happening now about that happening, that they're now trying to get approved for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I get a lot of calls from lenders, smaller local credit unions, regional banks, trying to figure out what the possible options are. And they're really starting at ground zero. Some of them don't even realize they can't just slap a signature on a note and call it an e-note. I really liked that blog article the other day. So
it was great. It really was.
Lots of those conversations over the last couple of weeks of, what we're able to facilitate. And I give them the options that I see some of the other lenders doing, and really just try and reinforce that I'm not an expert on you getting your loan sold. I know what we can insure. I know what our capabilities are. Here's what we can do. And then try and let them figure out, some of the specifics around what's going to happen. Because even on a hybrid, there's some interesting little questions. Does that note, if you're going to wet sign the note, do they want it on camera? Are they going to require it back prior to funding? And all of that depends on the lender and the relationship with the customer, and just the whole process behind it. So lots of those conversations happening.
Great. So thanks very much to all of our panelists, and thanks for having me on today as your host and moderator. I'm going to throw it to Steve Gottheim.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you again to all of our panelists, and to our featured webinar sponsor, Old Republic National Title Insurance Company, and all of our other ALTA Advocacy Summit sponsors for helping us bring you this important and timely content. As a reminder, this webinar, along with our one that we did last week, is recorded and will be available on the ALTA Advocacy Summit website later this week. We'll also have a download of this presentation and a lot of the checklists that our speakers mentioned today. So I know we got a lot of questions about those checklists, so keep searching back there later this week. Our next webinar in this advocacy series is going to be May 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll feature our CEO, Diane Tom, and her ex-coworker and friend, FHFA Director Mark Calabria. And they'll talk all things about what's going on in the mortgage market with the GSEs and kind of what to expect as we hopefully find an opportunity to come out of this crisis sometime shortly. So with that, have a great week, stay well, and thank you again for attending our ALTA Virtual Advocacy Summit.